it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Welcome to Odd Reality Radio, the show designed to generate thought through entertainment. Join us as we explore the strange and unexplained, the unanswered and the unbelievable on Odd Reality Radio.
An error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it.
Welcome to Odd Reality Radio. This is your host, Ty West, and on today's show, we'll be discussing personal accounts of the paranormal involving military and law enforcement personnel. I'd like to run through a couple of announcements, a few of which regarding changes to the show. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I'm going to, from here on out, be doing the show alone. Life has a funny way of sweeping us up and leaving us with not enough hours in the day to do everything that we'd love to do. Joshua Ray has some obligations with a new position of work and some other things going on, so he's had to step away from Odd Reality Radio. And no, there wasn't any type of falling out or anything. In fact, we've discussed him coming in as a guest host to interview a couple of guests and to discuss a few topics and everything. So But I'd like to take this time to say thank you to Joshua Ray for all of your help and hard work with the successful launch of Odd Reality Radio. I really do appreciate it, and I wouldn't be here at episode 8 without all of your help. So thanks again, Josh. Next up on the list of announcements is feedback. Thank you guys who have taken the time out of your busy schedules to supply us with this extremely valuable feedback. Please keep sending it. We've got a new email address, and that is info@oddrealityradio.com. Once again, that's info, I-N-F-O, @oddrealityradio.com. And obviously, oddrealityradio.com is the new domain name of the website, but it's not quite linked and up and running yet. But in the near future, we should have that linked over to the website. Until then, you can access the website at bit.do/oddrealityradio. Once again, that's bit.do/oddrealityradio. So feel free to check that out. I'm going to be making some pretty big changes to the appearance and content of the website here in the near future as well, with some changes to the show. But in the meantime, let's share some of this feedback that we've received recently. First of all, we'd like to say thank you to all the people who've given us recent likes on the Facebook page. For those of you who haven't access to that yet, it's facebook.com/oddrealityradio, simple enough. And the most recent comment that we've received on the site comes to us from Jennifer in Pennsylvania. And she says, I really enjoy the show. I came across it while listening to your show on Tesla. He is a hero of mine, and your show on him was well done. I've since listened to all of the shows. Keep it up, guys. Well, thank you, Jennifer. That's awesome to hear from somebody who is a fellow fan of Tesla, that we've done well with the episode that we've provided. I hope to continue to cover things that are Tesla related throughout the history of the show. And I'd love to do at least one episode every 6 months to a year on Tesla. I feel like there's plenty of good content and Tesla related information within the paranormal, strange, and supernatural that Odd Reality Radio likes to cover. So thanks again, Jennifer. We really appreciate the comments. And next we have an email from Jeff in Illinois, who writes in response to the most recent episode where we discussed dumb bases and underground tunnels. Jeff writes, Gentlemen, just wanted to share some info with you in regards to the tunnels you were talking about in Missouri. I can't say that there isn't something odd going on somewhere in there, but I can say that most of it is actually commercial warehouse space. The reason the tunnels were so expansive is that it was an old limestone quarry that was shut down. Companies love getting these old places because they're cheap, easily climate controlled, especially for refrigerated goods, and they were carved out with the intention of fitting heavy-duty trucks down these corridors. There is a similar setup near where I live, just outside of St. Louis, Missouri, on the Illinois side of the river. If you get on YouTube and search for the Missouri tunnels, you can find video from truck drivers delivering to the place. I have no doubt that there are some strange things out there, but in this case, I think the answer is mundane. Jeff. Well, thank you a ton for the feedback, Jeff. That's interesting to hear. Obviously, being here in Salt Lake, I can't quite say with the experience that you can of what's exactly going on or going in and out of those. That makes some sense, though, that there would be some storage. But again, I was discussing this with a couple of people the other day, and we were thinking that what's the likelihood of just the surface areas, say levels 1 and 2, being this refrigerated warehouse space or warehouse storage, and then there being subsequent stations below that. I mean, obviously it's a bit conspiratorial, but that's a little more Odd Reality Radio style. But I really do appreciate the feedback. Everybody, please keep sending it in. Once again, the email address is info@oddrealityradio.com. Finally, I would like to mention that next week, the 4th of September through the 6th of September, I will be at the Salt Lake ComicCon, helping out at the Utah Project and Utah UFO Hunters booth with the veteran ufologist Alien Dave, or Dave Rosenfeld. So come on down to the Salt Palace. Dave will be at the booth, as well as doing a couple of panels with some other really experienced researchers, local and otherwise, I believe. I'm pretty sure that Ryan Burns of the amazing book Skinwalker and Beyond, regarding the Skinwalker Ranch down in Duchesne, he'll be there as well, selling and autographing copies of his book. Once again, that's this upcoming Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, September 4th, 5th, and 6th at the Salt Palace right here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was an awesome experience. This is actually where I met Joshua Ray in April, was the Fan Experience version of the Salt Lake Comic-Con here earlier this year. So come on out, check it out, stop by the booth, say hello, I think I should have some business cards or something by then, so come by, at least say hello. Share a story if you can in person. That'd be awesome. Let me know that you're a listener. That's another thing that I would love to do, is to meet some people that are actually active listeners. I would love to meet a stranger or two that's become a fan of the show. On today's show, we'll be hearing 3 tales from law enforcement and military personnel. Everything from a case involving a bizarre run-in with a couple of guys in a hearse, to a time slip / close encounter, and a run-in with an unexplained creature right here in an abandoned Utah mine. And I'd like to point out that all these stories are coming from a collection of short stories entitled True Police Stories of the Strange and Unexplained, compiled by Detective Sergeant Ingrid P. Dean. So thanks again, Detective Sergeant Ingrid P. Dean, for the great book. And for those of you interested in this kind of stuff, go out and get yourself a copy. It's a pretty interesting book. And this is just a small taste of what is to come on Odd Reality Radio. Stick around. Now, this first story is a strange tale, although not quite supernatural entirely. It is titled The Fatality, and was compiled and written by patrol officer of 20 years in Flint, Michigan, Michael Thomas. It was not uncommon for me to be 20 or 30 miles away from a call or an accident. One day, the dispatcher reported a rollover accident, possible fatal, and requested for a car to respond. I radioed in and drove to the scene even though I was more than a half an hour away. When I arrived, I saw a car had rolled over onto its roof. There was no one inside. I did, however, find one body that had apparently been thrown from the car and was lying nearby, face up, in the ditch. The strange thing is that the man's legs and arms were crossed. This was unusual. I couldn't help but notice how peaceful he looked. He was deader than a doornail, but he looked peaceful. Fatal accidents require hours of tedious and time-consuming investigation. Pictures must be taken, sketches made, and measurements noted. The investigator may have to recreate the accident scene in a courtroom several years after the fact, so I requested assistance from an accident reconstructionist from the crime laboratory. This will be a 5-hour report before it is over, I thought. After I roped off the area and set out some flares, I returned to the car. As I was sitting in the cruiser writing notes and recording data, an old Cadillac hearse pulled up. 2 men were inside. They parked in front of me, waved hello, and smiled as they got out. I watched as they walked over to the body. Each man grabbed a limb, and they started to carry the dead man toward the hearse. To say the least, I was surprised. I jumped out of my car and raced over to them. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I bellowed. "Put that body back the way that you found it and get the hell out of here." I made it clear that I had not summoned a hearse and would not need them for at least a few more hours. I would call them when their services were needed. The driver and the assistant stood there, dumbfounded. At 6 feet 4 inches and 225 pounds, they were not about to challenge me. They could see I was not in a good mood, and I meant business. So they returned to the hearse. After several minutes, one of them eased out of the vehicle and approached me. He said, "We were en route from a funeral home near Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we were transporting the body of a man who passed away the day before yesterday. We happened to come across this rollover just after it had happened, and both the driver and one occupant were injured. Our hearse was full, and there was more money in transporting injured people than dead people, so we put the dead guy in the ditch, loaded up the 2 injured individuals, and raced them to the hospital. Now we're returning to pick up the original body." I have had serious injury accidents that turned out into fatals, however. I never had a fatal accident that turned into an injury accident. Just goes to show that anything can happen. Author's note says, in the 1960s, just about every small-town funeral home used its hearse as an ambulance when they were not using it as a hearse. This helped pay bills and gave morticians something to do in their spare time. An Ohio State trooper, now deceased, shared this story with me. And again, that was written by Michael Thomas, officer retired of Flint Police Department, Schwartz Creek, Michigan. It makes sense to use a hearse as, a way to transport people who are injured. Obviously, you've got the plank in case somebody's back is injured, for instance, or whatever. But that's kind of a clever and humanitarian idea and concept to help, when an ambulance can't quite arrive in time. You'd obviously increase the chances of survival, so why the hell not? Coming up next, we've got a tale of an officer's missing time and an encounter with an unknown creature in an abandoned Utah mine. Stay tuned. You're listening to Odd Reality Radio. The next story is entitled The Encounter. I retired from the police force in 2002. The encounter occurred in the middle of the night in September 2008 at my home in a rural area near Holland, Michigan, which is on the coast of Lake Michigan. It had been a warm, calm, uneventful evening. My family was in bed, and the last thing I remember is that I was sitting on the couch watching TV. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the yard outside my home. It was dark and very quiet. I was not dreaming. I was completely conscious. The silence was eerie. Ahead, in the near distance, I saw a pin-sized light and then a very bright wave-like flash that seemed to move through and past me. It almost knocked me back a step. Then, I felt a presence behind me, and when I turned around to see, there were 3 small gray beings just standing there, shoulder to shoulder. They were the classic gray, 4-feet-tall aliens that are commonly seen in science fiction movies and books. They had large, black, almond-shaped eyes and long, slender arms and legs. Oddly enough, I was not afraid, and I did not feel intimidated in the least. It was as if I somehow knew them. The being in the middle said they needed my help. His lips did not move. Communication was telepathic, and I heard his request as if it came from a friend or a neighbor. I willingly agreed to help. I don't remember what happened next, but the next thing I do remember is looking up and seeing a huge craft hovering. There was a second craft about 400 feet away from the main one, and I sensed that time had passed since I first communicated with them, but I couldn't tell how much. I was in a semi-paralyzed state and very tired, as though I had done a lot of work. My breathing was heavy and felt damp with perspiration. It took all of my strength just to stand up. My arms hung down at my sides, and as I looked up at the craft, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Using all the strength I could muster, I looked at my left and saw 2 men, humans, whom I didn't recognize, standing near me. We were about 10 feet apart from each other and looking up. They appeared to be in their 30s. Neither of them seemed able to talk, and they looked as paralyzed and as tired as me. They were breathing heavily too, and there was no sound to be heard, nor a breath of moving air. A bright light at ground level was behind us and illuminated the area, including the craft hanging in the air. But I couldn't turn around to see the source. Then I realized the small gray beings were gone. The next thing I remember, I was looking up at the craft in the night sky. There was a thunderous sound and an opening 200 to 300 feet wide appeared in the sky. It was amazing. I could see blue sky and clouds through the opening, but it was still nighttime where I stood. Clouds were turning into themselves around the opening. Then, in the blink of an eye, the first craft flew into the opening, followed by a second ship. Then the sky closed up. Again, I heard a clap of thunder. With that, I awoke from this strange state and found myself inside the house. However, my 8-year-old daughter was now sleeping in the living room on the floor, which was weird. What the hell just happened to me, I wondered. I grabbed my kid's crayon and started drawing what I had seen. I noticed it was about 5:30 a.m. at this point, and I was in a daze. My wife went to work, my daughter went to school, and I didn't share my experience with anyone. As usual, my wife called me at work later that day. She told me that our daughter woke up at around 3:30 a.m. and saw a lot of bright, flashing lights outside the roof dormer window. My wife told her to go back to bed, but instead, our daughter went to sleep on the living room floor. My jaw dropped when my wife told me this because I had not said anything about what had happened to me. I had now received some confirmation that my encounter had really happened. Later, I talked with my daughter about that night, and she said that she saw about 11 flashes of light. That's all she counted before she got scared and put her head underneath the covers. She waited a little while before looking again, and when she did, she didn't see lights anymore. She then ran up to tell her mom. If my daughter awoke between 3 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., and I found myself back inside the house 2 hours later, What had happened during those 2+ hours? Why did I feel so tired? And most importantly, why couldn't I remember anything in between? I was sick with flu-like symptoms for a week, which was odd because I seldom get the flu, especially at the end of summer. I filed a report with the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, and they have been supportive and helpful. MUFON said that I'm one of the few people who remembered a hole in the sky. They also said that it's not unusual to only remember the beginning and ending of such an experience. 2 scientists came up from Detroit and Indianapolis to do exhaustive testing with a complete search of my property. They inspected a small tree in the backyard that had dropped dead only 1 week later. They also found some plants dying off and took soil and leaf samples. I have not heard anything back as of this time, and I believe the investigation is still ongoing. Not a day or an hour that goes by when I don't think about this experience. It doesn't ruin my life, but I constantly replay the incident over and over in my mind. It was an extraordinary experience, one I never thought would happen to me, but it did, and my life will never be the same. Afterward, I felt driven to make a model of the UFO, and also designed a rudimentary picture of the hole in the sky. The craft had vein-like lines going around the outside of the main sphere. These red veins had a glossy appearance. The 2 smaller white globes on the ends of the beams seemed to glow slightly. And that story came from Kent Milner, a reserve officer, retired Grandville Police Department, Michigan. Now, I found this to be a rather peculiar story, and I've got a couple of questions that I'd really like to ask if I ever had the opportunity to meet this gentleman. One is, did he ever recognize any of these other people that he references in this experience, the others that appeared to be paralyzed? And if he did, who were they? And if he had an opportunity to ask them about their experience or what they may remember, that might shed some light on the rest of this story. The other thing that I found really interesting was this hole in the sky. And it sounds like this incredibly visual description of what could be, to my limited knowledge, a wormhole or something of that nature. And I'd love to experience something like that, although from what I've researched, I found that most people that experience these kind of things don't really paint the picture before it happens. It just kind of happens, and they usually recount later. Now, his descriptions and visualizations were really, really well broadcast, in my opinion. I think that I'd like to know if he'd ever considered or gone through a hypnotic regression to see more about this event. And perhaps it could shed some light on what really happened during his missing time experience. But all in all, I think this is a fascinating story, and to hopefully follow up in the near future to see if there was anything that ever came of the strange dying plants and trees in his yard as well. That would be another great thing to follow up on. Unfortunately, under the circumstances and the nature of the beast, I highly doubt that we'll ever hear anything further than what we've already heard. Now, our next story takes us close to home for the Odd Reality Studios, and we ventured to Utah. And this story takes us on a very unique adventure. I think that it's something that I would love to experience myself, but at the same time, I don't know how I may react. I would love to be as equipped as this gentleman, but again, obviously these are all officers and men of the military, so they should be fairly well equipped in the circumstances. But this story is a really unique one, so let's get into it. This story is titled The Kid, And unfortunately, the author has chosen to remain anonymous due to the type of work that they do within the military. They are retired United States Army Special Investigations. So that kind of tells you a little bit about the story that we're about to read. Abandoned mines are extremely dangerous to explore, or even to go near. In Utah, many are undocumented, especially on private property. Mine shafts are particularly hazardous because they are nothing but vertical openings that go very deep, some more than 1,000 feet into the earth. People can fall into the shafts, never to be found again, which makes abandoned mines and mine shafts ideal places to dump dead bodies. I'm a federal undercover officer, and my work requires special clearance. A confidential informant told me that a body had been dumped down a winze of an abandoned mine shaft. Winzes are vertical drops, but within the mines themselves they are shafts that connect one level to another lower level, like an elevator shaft without the elevator. Winzes can descend to depths that are filled with water, toxic, and radioactive material. I'm sure bodies can decompose quickly if culprits know what they are doing, and I do not recommend anyone ever explore such places. The shaft collars of these dormant mines are often loose and unconsolidated, and the sides of the walls break away easily from intrusion. I drove into the quiet countryside and got permission from one of the owners to investigate the abandoned mine on his property. I first searched for the disturbances in the area. Any loose gravel, footwear impressions, and blood, anything to indicate that a body was dumped. I didn't see anything unusual. What I did find was old equipment and piles of waste rock all around a couple of old buildings. I spotted what I believed to be a mine tunnel. It was wide open. At least, this was consistent with what the informant had told me. You can't always trust an informant's information. I shined my light through the mine opening and could see movement in a dark corner. It appeared to be a child about 4 feet tall. I immediately yelled to him, "Police, come out. You are not in any trouble. It is just too dangerous for you to go any further." "Hello?" There was no answer. I thought it might be the rancher's kid, but learned later that he didn't have any children. This was a desolate area, and it didn't appear like anyone had been in here in a long time, not even vehicles. Reluctantly, I stepped into the opening of the mine. I didn't intend to proceed much further. It was too dangerous. The opening was held up by old support timbers that seemed safe enough and stable, but they could easily have been rotten wood. They could have easily been rotted wood. I tried not to be fooled by appearances. Such old structures can easily disintegrate from the weight of just one person. "Young man," I said, "this is not a cave. It's unstable and can cave in. Come out." I felt anxious for the boy to walk out, as I knew the dangers of all these places, and still no answer. I walked into the mine a little further, and I could see movement again. "I see you. Come out. I just want to talk with you. You can die if you fall down a hidden shaft." There was no answer, yet I knew I was not seeing things. It had to be a kid. It moved on 2 legs and appeared agile. He moved quickly. I was certain the kid was playing games with me. Then I thought to myself, okay, I'll just be totally still and catch you on your way out. Then I'll give you a good scolding and send you home. I stood behind a support beam for what felt like an hour. In reality, it was probably only 20 minutes. It was a hot day, and time felt like it was standing still. Then, I saw a flicker of movement, and the shadow again. But as soon as I saw it, it disappeared. I swear I didn't move a muscle. I started to second-guess myself and think, well, it could be an animal. Maybe it's a bear or a mountain lion, and it's merely escaping the noon heat. After all, animals are known to den in these empty mines. I kept one hand near my pistol at all times. It must have been 100 degrees, even in the cooler recesses of the mine. I took a drink of water and saw movement again. The shadow was definitely two-legged, and there was two obvious, long, slender arms. It is human, all right, I think. I no longer doubt myself. "Come on," I shouted. "I could use your help right now. Talk to me." It moved swiftly again from one support structure to another. I couldn't see it clearly in the dark. I stood still for another 20 minutes. I had decided to wait until it was close enough and then shine my flashlight on him. Admittedly, I was hot, getting frustrated, irritated, and tired of waiting. Nevertheless, I remained motionless and unwavering. When I'm truly beginning to doubt myself again, I finally saw more movement. And now it was getting closer. It was almost within arm's reach. I had him now. I surprised him. I shined my light on him with one swift click of the button. When he turned toward me, I saw a reptilian-faced creature that scared the shit out of me, and I ran. The instant the light shone on its face, it dove into the earth like water. Initially, I thought it went into a winze, but there didn't seem to be any opening. Though it was still dark, the ground was solid where it had disappeared. I wasn't seeing things. Its face was greenish-gray and reptilian. Maybe it was an animal, but no one has been able to convince me of that yet. It was too weird. I suppose it could have been a person in a mask, but in a dark mine, with no one else around. Now, this story was one that stood out to me because, well, for one, it's a Utah-based tale, and I'm a sucker for home-baked history. And number two, the fact that this person interacted with the creature or being for as long as they did, as well as the description of its features. Now, most people's accounts of reptilian interaction that I've come across so far have been really quick. I mean, just glimpses, just flashes of events. I mean, one basically just flashed and showed itself and disappeared in one account, and others are just seconds long. But the fact that this person interacted with it for they said initially what felt like an hour, but was probably 20 minutes. And then if you put all of it together, they probably were there for close to about an hour interacting with this thing. But one thing that I wish that I did know about this story a little further in depth was if this specific creature, if the individual could tell if it gave off any specific scent, anything peculiar or strong, and if so, what was it like, if he could describe that as well. Another thing that I wondered is if any of the locals, particularly the farmer that he spoke to, the land that he had to get permission to be on, that farmer or that rancher, I was curious if he had seen anything similar or had any peculiar instances where he was of any other nature, be it, UFO or ghost or poltergeist interaction. Obviously, the description of where it is vague. It says it's in an abandoned mine in Utah, and obviously it leads no path to where the hell they really mean, which is a bit of a bummer for an adventure buff like myself. But at the same time, I understand the necessity in keeping people's land private, as well as, not getting hurt. So as much of a bummer as it is, I won't go pursuing this because obviously there's not a whole hell of a lot to pursue. But if anybody else has heard of anything similar to this or any of the other stories that we've covered tonight, please get back to me at info@oddrealityradio.com. Once again, that's info@oddrealityradio.com. And on that note, I'd like to sincerely apologize for the sporadic and shortened version of Odd Reality Radio this week, but thank you for your feedback. Please send more in. Send me a story of your own event or, supernatural interaction. And until next time, continue to investigate life through the lens of possibility. I'm Ty West. Take care. I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you once again to Oleg Mokhov, who has generously offered his music as the theme music for Odd Reality Radio. He's agreed to allow us to use it, and so please, I encourage you to go check it out, get some of it for yourself. You can find that at mokhov.net, and that's mokhov.net.